This time I'll call the November 18th, 2024 County Council meeting to order. Are the mics working? All right. I will recognize the Honorable Debbie Cloninger from District 7 for invocation and pledge of allegiance.
In honor of our joyful Thanksgiving next week, and we're all thankful that my family's thankful for getting turkey, but I'm sure that a lot of people are thankful for many things. I would like to read this from the scripture, Psalm 100. Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all ye lands. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before his presence with singing. Know ye that the Lord, he is God. It is he that hath made us, and not we ourselves. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter into his gates with thanksgiving, and into his courts with praise. Be thankful unto him, and bless his name. For the Lord is good, his mercy is everlasting, and his truth endureth to all generations. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have one oath of office tonight. I'm sorry if I butcher this name. Ashima Singhal with the Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee. Are you here? If you would please come forward, and our county attorney will meet you in the middle of the room. Just come to the podium. We want to thank you for agreeing to serve on behalf of the community on the Tax Advisory Board. Folks don't know this, but we do have, we have our 4-H folks here. We have so many boards and commissions that we rely on our community to volunteer their time and effort, and they do it without getting paid, and oftentimes they don't get thanked for the work that they do, but we do appreciate you willing to step up and serve our community on this board.
I do solemnly swear that I'm duly qualified, according to the Constitution of this state, to exercise the duties of the office which I've been appointed. And I will, to the best of my ability, discharge the duties thereof, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of this state and of the United States. Help me God.
Thank you, ma'am. So we had a special treat today. The council got to meet ahead of the council meeting and spend some time with our 4-H group here in York County. We got to share some information, and more importantly, we got to hear a lot of good stuff back from the folks who served. And I was real impressed to see how many young folks are getting involved in our 4-H program and to learn about how you do your work through various clubs and work throughout the community. It was a real treat for our council to be able to meet with you. We did want to recognize you tonight. I understand that some members of the 4-H group want to address the council regarding their program.
Good evening. My name is Natalie Estes, and I'm thrilled to share that this is my 3rd year in 4-H. I'm currently a member of the York County 4-H Teen Council 4-H Gold Miners and helped this summer as a camp counselor. I've also attended the South Carolina 4-H Healthy Habits Summit and the South Carolina 4-H State Congress. I'm very grateful for the memories and friendships 4-H has given me so far. The most memorable part of my 4-H journey has been with the Dairy Goat Project, and it has been truly transformative. Through this project, I've discovered a deep love for dairy goats and have grown into such a more confident person. One of my favorite things is talking to people about goats. It ignites a passion in me to inspire others about the joy, dedication, and hard work that goes into showing these amazing animals. This year, my commitment and preservation has led me to compete at the South Carolina State Fair, an incredible experience that fueled my excitement for the next show season. It has also showed me how much can be achieved through hard work and determination. Being a part of the York County 4-H has not only deepened my passion for plants and animals, but has also taught me the value of giving back to my community. It's encouraged me to step out of my comfort zone, speak up more, and inspire others to get involved. Through the many opportunities 4-H has offered, I've grown in maturity and confidence, pushing myself to take on new challenges and projects. 4-H has truly transformed my life, and I'm so grateful for the experiences, growth, and community it has given me. Thank you, York County Council, for your continued support of 4-H.
Hi, my name is Noah, and I am 11 years old. This is my third year active in 4-H. Since joining 4-H program, I have participated in many different projects and learned a lot. Before joining 4-H, I had trouble making good friends and finding other kids who are interested in things I enjoy, like animals, gardening, and science. Now I am a leader in my clubs and my community. Our 4-H program has taught me to work hard and put effort into every project. I have learned that I can master new skills like building bridges from popsicle sticks, growing tomatoes, photography, and archery. Did you know you can build a crane with cardboard, string, and tape? My team and I created one to move materials at the South Carolina Engineering Competition last year. This summer, I learned how to catch a fish and how to snow chickens. Our leaders help us to learn to show animals confidence and patience. I have learned a lot about chickens and even more about myself. 4-H has inspired me to take an active role in my community. I enjoy volunteering at my church community garden to grow food for the local soup kitchen. Our 4-H leaders have helped our community garden project with seeds, volunteer labor, and by arranging educational meetings with master gardeners. I'm meeting lots of new friends and pursuing amazing opportunities through 4-H clubs. In addition to meeting master gardeners, I had opportunity to learn from an archaeologist and a veterinarian. I have also had the great honor of speaking with state legislators in Columbia about everything I'm learning. Tonight, I'm honored to speak with you and to thank you for supporting me, my friends, and everyone in our local 4-H program. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Avery Smith. I'm 12 years old, and I've been enrolled in 4-H for about 2.5 to 3 years now. I'm in quite a few different clubs, and those are the Happy Hooves Horse Club, the Pumpkin Pie Dairy Goat Club, the Science Club, and the Sewing Club. In addition, I'm the treasurer of the Happy Hooves Horse Club and the Pumpkin Pie Dairy Goat Club. 4-H has done quite a lot for me, and some of those things are giving me leadership and presentation skills. For example, if I hadn't learned those skills, I wouldn't be able to speak to you here tonight. I've got a lot of good memories from 4-H, and some of those are from chicken shows. It's a lot of fun to be able to get together and show with friends, and it's overall just a really fun experience. Some other really fun memories are from the hippology and horse bowl competitions. Hippology and horse bowl is a study of the horse. So pretty much me and some other kids get together a couple times a month, and we study horses and talk about different things, and then we all go to a big competition as a team and compete against other teams at the state. As you can see, 4-H has really impacted me, but 4-H can also impact the community. They can help the poor, they can help do trash pickups and other service projects. For example, I recently organized a Path Volunteer Day where me and some other kids got together and packed up all the things in the Path thrift store and got it ready to be moved to the next location. And it also just makes people really, really happy. 4-H is a very warm and friendly community, and we all get to have fun together and learn. Thank you for having me. Good night.
Thank you, ma'am. Once again, we just want to say thank you so much for coming to council early today at 5 o'clock to have a meeting with us, and we appreciate the little goodie bag that you've given us. We got to learn a lot about what 4-H is doing and And it's not always just raising animals, it's all sorts of things throughout the community.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Kristen, are you going to end us, or were you done? You good?
Thank y'all. I appreciate it. Have a great night.
Thank you, ma'am. We move now to our public forum session. This is an opportunity for folks who have signed up. We have 15 slots for folks to speak for 2 minutes on something that's related to council business. If you'll pay attention to the screen will start blinking, and then it'll go to a red when your time is up. So if you'll do that, I won't have to cut you off. When you come up, when I call your name, if you'll please come to the podium and state your name and give your address before you start speaking. Our first individual who signed up is Brendan McCluskey.
Good evening. I don't know when the clock starts. You'll let me know.
Once you say your name and give your address.
Sorry. Okay. Good evening. I think it's fitting that this room was filled with children today and parents because they're listening to.
Did he give his name and address?
Silfab proposed factory would store and treat 20.
Mr. McCluskey, if you'll just state your name and give your address.
Hi, I'm Brendan McCluskey. My address is 729 Warwick Way in Fort Mill. Keep in mind, he is watching. Silfab's proposed factory would store and treat 22,000 pounds of explosive silane and 15,000 gallons of highly toxic hydrofluoric acid, which becomes Class 3 hydrogen fluoride air pollution when it exits the on-site acid scrubber next to children, just like these in this room. The hazardous chemical storage and wastewater treatment facility are clear violations of Fort Mill's light industrial district. They state in their own documentation interconnecting solar cells through a conductive medium called closed space sublimation enamel cells together, yet the location remains zoned with reason as light industrial according to Chapter 155 of the County Code of Ordinance. Light industrial does not include hazardous material treatment, storage facilities, or enameling. I'm here today to remind you all of the impact that the Silfab development is having on our community. On November 5th, the Fort Mill School Board voted to populate the Flint Hill Elementary School with 800 children. My son is going there next year. Many are like the ones that you see in this room. I've witnessed several neighbors break out in tears over the situation York County has placed us in. Many neighbors have placed their homes up for sale, listing Silfab as a reason. Some on the school board say the fear is unwarranted. Some on this council might also say so. I don't believe this is fear at all. I think this is parental instinct and common sense. I ask the council please recognize my son and my daughter's right to health and safety, just like the children in this room, for a safe education. My final question is, since the county has stated as fact the BZA ruling applies to all future development in York County and Silfab solar cell manufacturing lines are planned to be developed in the future, why is York County not enforcing the ruling of the BZA, which is now standing law? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Zachary Zapak.
Good evening. I'm Zach Zapak, 624 Meadowbrook Lane, Rock Hill. I'm a Pennies for Progress Commissioner for Pennies number 5 and have learned about an issue that is going to be before you tonight on a consent agenda to approve the Pennies utility relocation project. I would like to inform you that there has been some confusion surrounding this, and I'm simply asking you to table that matter tonight until we can get the right people in the room to resolve that matter. Be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Scott Kokenauer.
Hey, everybody. Scott Kokenauer, 122 West Oak Street in the beautiful Whiteville Park neighborhood in downtown Fort Mill. And fortunately, I was able to do 2 years of ag and 2 years of horticulture at Indiana High School. So I am going to go home, fire up the grill, and I'm still picking tomatoes out of my backyard. And I got some suckers that I did about 8 weeks ago that are putting out some blossoms. So we're still picking tomatoes in Fort Mill. So just y'all keep it up. It's good stuff and good memories. Hey, Brown Simpson did ask me to sit on the York County Parks Advisory thing that happened a couple months ago. So just here to report that for you, that we had a nice meeting. Unfortunately, there were only 3 of us there, 2 from Fort Mill, 1 from TKK. But in our part of the county, it seems like the county's really not going to be able to purchase land or do parks over there. So, and we do want to support the parks in York County, but I think our concept was if we can support our town and the city of TKK, come back with 80 or 85 cents on the dollar back to help our 2 parks departments. And then we do want Riverbend Preserve to continue to be a great thing, and the other parks that we do have in York County. So we appreciate that. And I think leaving the Rex out of it was probably a good thing, just at this time and everything. So everything is the presentation that we saw and the input, the guys from Clemson that listened to us, they were very helpful or seemed like responsive to what we were talking about. So just wanted to give y'all a heads up on that. So appreciate what y'all do. Everybody have a good Thanksgiving. See y'all.
Thank you, sir. C.W. Sin.
Good afternoon, C.W. Sin, 520 West Mount Gallant Road, York, South Carolina. I'm just here tonight to speak to you about a conversation I had with a lady in a grocery store the other day. She complained about food prices, and I looked at her and I said, well, the last time I checked, which was about 10 years ago, Americans spend the least amount of their disposable income on food of any country in the world. So I went back and double-checked, and we're still there. So I just wanted to bring y'all that information so that you would know that. Yes, I am a former 4-H club member, former dairyman, former submarine sailor, cattleman. And somebody who tries to stay interested in
Thank you, sir.
what y'all will do.
Still got a minute, C.W. You gonna go back, or are you done?
No, I'm done.
Okay. Thank you.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet. That's right.
Good to see you, CW.
Our next person to speak is Corey Zesson.
Good evening. My name's Corey Zesson. I reside at 1073 Ellis Pond Drive in Rock Hill. I worked as a police officer in Rock Hill for 6 years, and I currently work as a police officer in a neighboring city. I'm here tonight to review shelter statistics from the last 3 months. In August, the shelter took in a total of 211 animals. Of those, 144 were strays, 58 were owner surrenders, and 9 were confiscated. 82% of the dogs accepted by the shelter were not fixed, and 92% of the cats accepted were not fixed. Rock Hill South was responsible for the most animals overall, the most strays, and the most dogs. Catawba was responsible for the most owner surrenders and the most animals who were not categorized as dogs or cats. York was responsible for the most cats. In September, the shelter accepted 279 animals. Of those, 149 were found as strays, 84 were owner surrendered, and 46 were confiscated. 85% of dogs were not fixed, and 97% of cats were not fixed. Rock Hill South was responsible for the most animals, the most strays, the most owner surrenders, and the most cats. York was responsible for the most dogs. In October, the shelter took in 252 animals. 189 of those animals were picked up as strays, 50 were owner surrendered, and 13 were confiscated. 85% of dogs taken in were not fixed, and 94% of cats taken in were not fixed. York was responsible for the most animals overall, the most owner surrenders, and the most cats. Rock Hill South was responsible for the most strays and the most dogs. Fort Mill was responsible for the most animals who were not coded as dogs or as cats. Please do not let these statistics that I just explained to you fall on deaf ears. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sarah Levens.
My name is Sarah Levens. I live at 660 Sunset Point Drive in Rock Hill. So to piggyback off what Corey just explained, I want to elaborate. Overpopulation of animals impacts everyone. Not only is pet overpopulation a burden to taxpayers, but it also affects the safety and welfare of our community as a whole. Too many animals can impact the health of citizens by spreading disease. Too many animals running at large can impact the safety of residents, and too many animals create noise and odor that can impact the community's ability to enjoy their personal property. Animals that are not fixed often become nuisances as males seek females in heat and vice versa. These male dogs often become aggressive, not only with other pets, but with humans who attempt to intervene. Male dogs can impregnate multiple females, which adds to the overabundance of pets in our community. Our county's animal population has exploded, which has in turn created a large number of problems that responsible community members are forced to solve. Those living in York County deserve better. We deserve to live in a community where we are not faced with health, safety, and nuisance concerns that this overpopulation creates. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Karen Brown.
Good evening, Karen Brown, 127 Sunny's Way, Fort Mill. So what I want to give you some ideas that we have and suggestions for how to control the spay-neuter problem that we have in the county, with the fact that we don't have any regulations in place. So these are some ideas I want to put out there, and I've handed them out, or Karen has handed them out to everybody so that you could follow along on this piece of paper. First idea we have on here is to extend our current ordinance to require male and female unaltered dogs to be confined within a building, secure fence, or kennel, or to prevent contact with stray dogs. Our current ordinance only addresses unaltered female dogs. Require dogs to be spayed and neutered unless owner has a breeding permit. Require registration of dogs similar to auto, boat, and RV registration, hunting and fishing permits, and voter registration. Establish requirements, permits, and minimum standards of care for breeders. Another idea is limit the number of unaltered outside dogs on the property, including those housed in sheds, pens, outbuildings, etc. Another idea would be unaltered outside dog permits, so basically a fee for unaltered outside dogs and no fee for those that are altered. Require all outside animals to be spayed and neutered. And lastly, alter reclaimed animals at the shelter before being returned to owners, being a policy that any animals brought into the shelter would be, like I said, would be spayed or neutered before returned. Thank you for taking all these ideas under consideration. They could be considered singly or, grouped together. Certainly some more conversation would have to follow to explain some of these ideas and for your, for you to be able to ask questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Michael Roby.
Good evening. Michael Robb,
Sorry.
1619 Flagsworth Road in Lake Wiley. I just wanted to come here as a representative of the River Hills Lake Wiley Lions Club and thank our Councilwoman Love for all of her support this year with the Lions Club, and wanting to invite the council and the residents of York County out to our pancake breakfast on December 14th from 8:30 to 11 a.m. At Camp Thunderbird. And tickets are $10 and you can play at the door or you can pick them up around town up in Lake Wiley. And again, just want to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving and thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you, sir. That concludes our public forum session. We move now to our consent agenda. We do need a motion. I do need to remove item number 12.
Motion to approve by deferring number 7 to our December 3rd meeting for a vote at that meeting.
Wait. That's the only way to deal with that is if you want to remove it.
We gotta
If you
pull it
want,
out.
you need to pull it out
We'll pull it out.
and put it on this agenda.
Yep, to new business. So
All
remove
right,
number
so
7.
we need the motion to include number 7 and 12.
Motion to approve moving number 7 and 12 to new business.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Move now to our first item of old business, council to discuss potential zoning code text amendment related to self-storage facilities.
I'll kick us off right quick. That's okay.
Do we have any presentation for management? Josh, any comments or questions? I will say for folks that are watching or tuning in, we had a meeting about this previously and requested that staff come back with some information.
Yes,
That information was.
so no presentation for these three items tonight. We've attached a staff report that document the issues in their entirety to the agenda. That document is also in your blue folder in front of you. Our goal this evening is to answer your questions. We took all of your questions from previous meetings. We documented all the potential options for all three of these issues, and we're happy to talk through each one individually. But I thought staff did a great job putting the issues in their entirety in the document. And at the end of each section, you'll see options laid out. So for the first item, self-storage, there's potential options, and I apologize, there's not page numbers, but what you'll see at the end of that section is three options, and we can talk through those options if you like. But I think as I've discussed these topics with all of y'all, I think y'all have thought through this and might have things you want to start the discussion with.
I'll start. I'd like to echo your sentiment. Appreciate the work that the Planning and Development Services Director did to put all this content together on self-storage, AGC, and lot measurements. Starting with self-storage on pages 5 and 6, he did outline options for us. And so when I brought this up to council as a result of us dealing with 660, that's how this all came up in Lake Wiley. I didn't necessarily have an issue with self-storage. What I had an issue with was if you see the self-storage buildings. So I'm more inclined to look at option 1. And I would like staff, not necessarily tonight, but I'd like staff to give us a little more information on how they would build out the ordinance related to building setbacks and disallowing on lots with major road frontage. So if they could get a little more specific with those two, that would help me make a better decision. But I don't have an issue with it and where it's currently approved in Zone 4. I'm a little concerned about the need to see a storage building.
Do you want to go down the line?
I'm just asking staff at a future meeting to come back with more information, help clear up A and B.
I don't have anything.
Okay?
I don't have any problem with them. You might could put a couple of restrictions or whatever, but honestly, most of them I've seen being built are nicer than a lot of the buildings that are people are working in.
I'll just say, I'll reserve my comments to see whatever staff bring back, because it's kind of impossible to make a comment now, not knowing what they're going to bring back, what are some of the requirements or setbacks or conditions that we're going to put on them. So until they bring something forward, I'll just wait.
So does anybody object to that, or we're just going to ask staff to come back?
Fine.
All right.
Okay.
You have that instruction. I don't know that we need a motion and a discussion item.
No, we
We'll
can
just
work on
look
that.
for
We appreciate the
direction.
feedback.
All right. Move now to item number 2, council to discuss potential zoning code text amendment regarding multiple principal dwellings on a single lot in AGC district. Anything from?
Yes, so as y'all will see in the document, what we tried to do is we tried to lay this out to show kind of the charge that y'all gave initially, and then how we as staff saw the problem definition, and then really started to unpack that. I think as we dug into this with staff, and we thought about this, to us, yes, this started with 2 primary dwellings on a lot, but I think there's more to this. And so if you go, and I love the blue chart. I can't tell you what page it's on because I don't have page numbers on mine, but it shows Table 6, existing AGC lot sizes. We've got a total of 6,200 AGC parcels, 6,241 exactly. 2,100 of those are under 5 acres. And I think that really is what we're dealing with here, is there's a lot of AGC lots that are small. And so we don't get a ton of requests for 2 new primary dwellings on one of those lots. But what this really is about is what kind of density is council interested in seeing in our rural zoning districts. And so the more we unpack this, the more layers we pulled back, I really am at the point where I'm, as your county manager, recommending number 5 on the options, which is to consider a larger scope project where we could evaluate the rural zoning districts in their entirety and give you more feedback on the potential options that we see in order to address some of the overarching concerns. Instead of trying to fix this quickly, I think this is an opportunity to really unpack some of the changes in the code and how that might have impacted this, but also just decisions that have been made since the late 1980s when this was first done. We think studying the rural zoning districts, we can start to solve some of the underlying problems that we're seeing as a high-growth county. That would be our recommendation at this point, but you'll see that's one of 5 options before y'all that we've put out there for you to consider.
Madam Chair, I've
Yeah.
prepared notes. If you don't mind, because I'll pick up on some of what Josh just shared, if that's all right. Is that all right?
Do you want to lead?
Sure. So I look at this 2 ways. I look at this issue from a council perspective, and I look at it from a homeowner or a landowner of AGC. So I'm trying to look at it through both of those lenses. And the 3 things that I came up with that I think as council members, number 1, York County has been an agricultural county for as long as we can remember, going back to the beginning in the 1700s. And so one thing that in our strategic plan, it's baked into there that we're looking at agritourism, we're looking at agriculture and what we need to do with it. So, if we could encourage more people to farm the land that we have, I think that would be a great objective, but we can't control that. We'd also like to see some of our AGC land remain green space so we can embrace our identity of having a rural community, and which is part of our strategic plan as well. But then I think we have to offer the landowners of AGC options with their land. So, and I am thankful again of the information that was sent out. You referenced page 10, Josh, that's page 10 that's the graph that shows 6,241 AGC parcels. Well, there's actually 3,663 parcels that are 10 acres or less. That's over 58% of those parcels, of the 6,241 parcels, that are affected by the code change in 2022. So as a council, if we're concerned about property owners' rights, the Council of 2022 affected the rights of 58% of these landowners. I'm concerned about that. So then you say, well, what is it that you might consider doing? So in the document that Josh is referencing, that I'm referencing, that we all have copies of, that gives options, I'd like to get further clarification on numbers 2, 4, and 5. I'm not too interested in 1 and 3, but I'm interested in 2, 4, and 5. What am I interested in? Well, when you look at AGC, the way I broke it out as I thought through this is you've got family members and non-family members associated with AGC. So let's take family members first. These are just some notes I had. What is a family member? It's a sibling, a child, or parents. To me, if somebody owns 100 acres of land and they want to give someone, and arguably even more than one person, the right to an acre of land or more, I think they ought to have the right to do that, a family member. But I think it ought to come with a 5-year hold where they can't build their house and turn around and sell it to somebody that's not in the family. They'd have to wait at least 5 years. I think that obviously we have county standards, so they've got to meet the common access road and utility right-of-way requirement, so that's a must in order for this to happen. And I think non-family members, probably we set a floor of 3 acres or more. So if a non-family member wants to be on a 100-acre plot of land, they can, but it would be on 3 acres or more. I think about this. If you own AGC, and I've talked to some people that own AGC, and I've talked to people that represent landowners that own AGC, and what these individuals are telling me is, a lot of the people that own AGC land don't live here. And they're of the opinion that a number of people don't really know what kind of right they have with the land they own. So if your land is zoned AGC, depending on how much road frontage you have, then the value of your land could be $10,000, $15,000 an acre, depending on your frontage and other amenities on your property. But if you had the right to develop your land like you did in the code prior to 2022, you could take a 100-acre tract of land and you could parcel it, you could put a road through it, you pay for the road, obviously, meeting county standards. You could put a road in your property and you could have theoretically up to 33 parcels of land as long as they average 3 acres or more. Now, you own AGC, and we're determining the value of their land, and if the land's AGC and limited to just AGC, I just mentioned, today's dollars, it's worth $10,000, $15,000 an acre. I went online and looked in Lake Wiley. If you got a flat piece of land in Lake Wiley for sale right now, $199,000 an acre. Depending on the topo, it's going to be somewhere around $100,000 or greater. So let's just go with $100,000. If we're passing an ordinance that affects someone's ability, whether it be a family member or a farmer that's farmed the land all their life and this is their retirement, to choose between $10,000, $15,000 an acre for their land or $100,000 an acre, or maybe even $200,000 on some of those plots, I think they're going to want to have the right for the higher value with limitations from us. So I personally believe, ultimately, I'm not into developing York County, and I hope everybody's listening to everything that I'm saying and not picking one or two things out. But when you go back to the ordinance prior to 2022, it allowed an AGC homeowner to parcel their land out to non-family owners, but it was restricted to it has to be an average of 3 acres or more in their development. I think they should have the right to do that. It's still a limitation, but I think they should have the right to do it. And then you got minor subdivisions that an AGC owner is going to be limited to. I think we ought to have a provision for a minor subdivision that allows for a private gravel road that meets county requirements, the right shoulders, the right gravel depth and all that for a minor subdivision. And I think isn't that 6 or 7? Y'all know what it is? I'm not even sure. This is where we need clarification, but from 7? Okay, thank you. And then if they want a major subdivision, it's still going to be limited to 3 acres or more. And the last thing I'll say is, and I'm sure all of you did the same thing, you took the document that Jonathan sent us and you went through it and you read it, you digested it, you understand it. Well, think about this. Going back to y'all's committee meeting that you had when y'all discussed this, when you look at that big plot of AGC land, what if you owned the land in the middle of that plot and they came to council to get it rezoned because you have to have 10 acres or more and you have 2 dwellings and 1 accessory use on 10 acres or more? Everybody that had 9.99 or less can't do that. It's 10 or more. But if you happen to own 1,000 acres in the middle of all this AGC, council's not going to vote to spot zone it. They're not going to vote to move it to RUD. You're going to have to wait until the fringes that touch RUD and other zonings get rezoned before you'll have the chance to do something with your property realistically. So I think this is a pretty serious issue, and I'd like for staff to go back and look at 2, 4, and 5 and come back and give us a little bit more depth in this conversation to understand this more greatly, while taking into consideration what they put in our packet on page 10, 6,241 AGC parcels, 3,663 of those 6,241 are affected by our ordinance. That concerns me. Not that I want to see York County develop out, but 3 acres or more land is a lot of land. And you still maintain the integrity if you have that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'd like to start off by saying, this council and this county has to put a pin in what we want to call AGC. Because the last year and a half, it's been a sliding scale of what we call AGC. Some say 5 acres, some say 10 acres, some still want to call AGC 3 acres. Well, it can't be all 3 of them. And we've rezoned property to RUD in the midst of AGC in this last 6 months to a year. So don't say we can't do it. But I think that's our biggest challenge is what's the bottom line that we're going to call AGC? Because AGC, let's remember, AGC gets a break on their taxes. And 3 acres amongst an area with, if 5 acres is the minimum, and Bump wants to put a 3-acre home in there and call it AGC, I don't think that's right. Because 5 was the minimum. How can we drop it down and say we're going to allow 3? And I don't know if we took away property owners' rights in 2022 when we made some modifications to say about whether it's 2 homes on a property, but if you only have 5 acres and you're calling it AGC, I don't think it's right that you're able to put 2 homes on a 5-acre lot. We're going against what AGC stands for. AGC shouldn't allow for higher density. And if you're able to put 2 homes on a 5-acre lot, that's not AGC. Because we have some in RUD that's bigger lots than that have fewer homes in that. So how can AGC have 2 homes on 5 acres and we still call it AGC? They still getting tax breaks on their property, putting 2 homes there. So we need to figure out, the bottom line is what's the least amount of property can we have and still call it AGC? Because some areas it's 5 acres, some acres 10 acres. So we got to make that determination so that we can be consistent. I wrote down rights versus what we call an AGC. And if someone has that same 1,000 acres and they want to put 33 or whatever you said, about 33 lots in it, that's a major subdivision. There's a whole bunch of other things that kick into gear with water, sewer, roads. So it's not just that easy. Somebody got all this land, wants to subdivide it up. And I don't want to get into having 4 or 5 different boxes to check for family members, non-family members. Who's going to keep the eye out and making sure that somebody doesn't get this property and wait 3 years, 4 years, 5 years before they build a house and sell a house? We got to remember, there's a lot of moving parts, and I don't think this council needs to put 4 different boxes to where you should be able to give your family member how many acres you want to give them. But if it doesn't meet the minimum that we're going to set, and it goes back to what we're going to establish, what's the minimum? Don't give a family member 3 acres, call it AGC, then next you turn around and say, I should be able to put 2 homes on an AGC lot, which the rules, I think, some have fought to say that 2 homes can go on an AGC lot. So now you got 3-acre tract, a property owner comes and says, I should be able to put 2 homes on AGC. Now you got 1.5 acres per home versus 5-acre tract that you once fought for to get 2 homes, which made it 2.5 acres. So we got to put that bottom basement line in there of what we call AGC. Do we say 3-acre AGC tracts only get 1 home? Do we say 5-acre tracts can have 2 homes? Do we say 10-acre tracts can have 4 homes? We got to establish something that we can operate off of, because it seems to be a sliding scale, and it gets confusing with all of what we're trying to do. Because if I had an AGC tract, it's 3 acres, I would stand up there at that podium and say, I should be allowed to put 2 homes on my 3-acre tract, because you just let so-and-so put 2 homes on their AGC. So we got to establish that, and I think until we do that, it's always going to be a back and forth. And everybody has family members that we're trying to give land to make it easier for them to build and be successful, but we have to establish that baseline of what is the bottom basement that we can call AGC.
Is it 100% agree with you. We have to not only define what AGC is, but we have to define who we're representing. And we are representing, in my opinion, in my personal opinion, we are representing the people, the landowners, the property owners who have AGC, who value AGC, not necessarily the ones who want to come in and do a minor subdivision out in the middle of all these property owners. You've got a 1,000-acre property, like you use in your example, you know what, you got a lot of different parcels touching that. And they're there for a reason. They're not looking to have a big neighborhood out in the middle of AGC. So, you know, I understand AGC, I represent AGC. And, you know, there's a difference in how we maybe look at things. But I was in the committee meeting, and one of the things that I thought made sense was to say, you know what, if we have a 5-acre minimum for AGC, if you want to put 2 homes on that property, you're going to need a 10-acre minimum. So that the minimum for AGC, as defined, currently, that's how it's defined, is still 5-acre minimum lots. So I think we have to think about the people who maybe have a 5-acre lot, who don't want 2 neighbors on each side of them. They want their neighbors to be also on 5-acre lots. And so I think the definition of who we're representing, and I don't think we've heard from those people. So I kind of like number 5, because I do think it's a much larger scope than for us to sit here and say, hey, we've got this many people that we're limiting their property rights. Well, we do. But what we have on the other hand is their neighbors, who we are giving away, and we're watering down what they have, why they have it. So, and the other thing I think we need to talk about, it's easy to sit up here, and I'm not talking about anybody that's sitting up here, but it's easy to sit up here and talk about what somebody might want to do, and maybe they have a family member that wants to move back to their property, and, you know, maybe they've got 5 acres, and they want to give the family member 1 acre. You know what? That 1 acre is not as critical to that person as the person who's got 100 acres and wants to come back and have 5 or 10 acres. And let's not fight for the people who aren't wanting to do what we're fighting for. I think that's the key. You know, if we talk about, hey, my kids might want to come back and live here. Well, do they want to come back and live there? Because what you're getting ready to do is take something that's in your mind that maybe they do or maybe they don't, and you're going to set precedent for the whole rural part of York County. It's one of the most valuable things this county has. Well, we got a lake too, but you can't get to it unless you live on it. So this rural property is so important, and I'm not going to be on this council next year, but I don't want the people surrounding York County and in York County to look back and say, you know what, that's what that council of 2024 and 2025, and we'll probably still be talking about it, so that council of 24, 25, and 26 did to York County. It's the worst thing that could possibly happen here. And I think we need, number 5, makes you take a longer, harder look at it.
Okay. I wholeheartedly agree with number 5. I think that this is something that we have talked and still talking about. And and landowners are confused, and we are confused. But we have the opportunity to take a critical part of our county, and my heart, I don't live there, but my heart's there, and do something good. Do something right, make it to where people are comfortable with the decision, and I think that our group, they're chomping at the bit to get this right. So let's give them the opportunity, and I will support number 5.
Yeah, I support number 5. Originally, whenever this here started, my main concern was with families and all, which we can clearly see there's so many different ways to look at it, and looking at things in a rural setting because of the simple fact of there are still a lot of farms on RUD and all too, and we can call it AGC, RUD, whatever, but it's more in line with me just to say country people in general. Because I understand that a whole vast number of people that live in AGC don't farm. I also understand in our western side over here, a lot of the land ain't even farmable. Blackjack's got the best row crop. We got the best areas to raise cows. So I think number 5 would work, but I don't think it's going to be no quick fix by no means, because there's a lot to go over in this.
Well, I'm glad to hear from council. I mean, I think when this came up, there was, first of all, we realized that there are things that are in the code that I don't think folks understood and certainly didn't understand how it was being interpreted, but I have to agree with our county manager. When you go and take a look at the map, and over a third of the current AGC parcels don't fit what's in our code, that's what tells you got to change it. I mean, and when you have somebody who has coming to you before council who has 4.96 acres and we're telling them you can't even put one house on it, that's a problem that you need to fix. And when you have provisions in the zoning code that say AGC should be 2 units to 5 acres, but in other places it's taken away, there are problems that need to be fixed. So I think that number 5, which basically says take a larger scope, because I don't think anyone on council is saying go put big developments out in the middle of nowhere, but we do have to take a look at transitions, because if we don't, we're missing out on how to deal with communities, and we're going to see a lot of annexations. Right now, the city of Rock Hill is annexed. There's 400 acres that folks are looking at, and they currently have an ability to do 2-acre lots. We don't even have that. I mean, we used to have the ability to do a 3-acre average. Right now, the problem is what council is stuck with is either 5 acres for one, which is not even consistent with what the map shows we've done historically, but the only option we give is to go to 1 acre. So for instance, when this gentleman comes to us with 4.96 acres and they say, you know, staff says, you can't put 1 house on there, you're gonna have to rezone it. The only option was to go to RUD, which allows him to actually put 4 houses on there. But we have to do a deed restriction to pull it back to 1 acre. So I think, I mean, the question, I will say this though, the question of taxes is totally different. You have to meet that threshold, and I do want that clarified. So I don't want folks thinking that any of this zoning issue impacts that. There's a statutory provision that deals with that. That's totally separate from what we're talking about.
Correct. It's the use of the property, not the zoning, that sets the tax rate.
So there's just a lot here to unpack. When I look at other districts and how they're treating AGC, there are so many other options. There are 2-acre options. There's, you know, what I'm seeing is even in some of these districts, you can carve off an acre for a family to have it if it's a larger parcel. So just for purposes of making sure, I don't know that folks can see what we're talking about when we say pick number 5. What we're talking about is to consider a larger scope project to evaluate the rural zoning districts, AGC, AGC1, RUD, RUD1, RC, and RI, the purpose and implementation for each and whether adjustments should be made amongst them, and then figure out how to marry that to the comprehensive plan goals, because I think there are a lot of goals and competing goals, but we've got some issues to clean up in our code. So hearing the consensus, I think we're going to move forward with 5 and look to do you have another comment?
Yeah. I wanted to point out that I know in our committee, when we were talking about this, we discussed having that so close option for staff.
Yeah.
So that if someone did come up with 4.96 or just short of having them to rezone, which like you said would allow them to put more homes, let's work with our residents if they're so close. Now, if you got 4.
That's the next one.
Yeah.
We're going, the third option, we'll talk through that one.
So
it's the same as, we talked about it under that discussion in the committee. But we have a third, but it's different than discussion item that deals with issues related to the lot size that you're talking about.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Our next discussion item is zoning.
Madam
code
Chair,
amendments
one
for lot
follow-up,
text amendment.
please. Before 2022, AGC allowed anybody with any size property, 1 acre, 2 acre, 3 acre, didn't matter, allowed them the right to 2 houses and an accessory use. In 2022, it was changed to 10 acres. So if you look, there are 6,241 AGC parcels of land in York County. So when council in 2022 made the decision to shift to 10 acres, you negatively affected 3,663 parcels of land. And guess what? You changed the value of their land, and we didn't even give them anything for it. And they don't even really know that it was taken from them until they decide to do something with their land, and then they say, I never knew this. This didn't make sense to me. Furthermore, I'm not suggesting that we develop land, but we have taken the right of way from Tommy Atkins as an example. He couldn't take his land and divide it into average 3-acre plots of land. Well, he can, he's RUD, but if he were AGC, he couldn't do it under our current ordinance because we took that away. You took away the opportunity for somebody that has held on to land for years, during 2008 and other times when the economy was down, they held on to it to do something with it at some point so they could put reasonable money in their pocket. So I'm just suggesting you take into consideration, as you deliberate this, take into consideration what AGC was before 2022, what it is now, and what you think it might ought to be in the future.
I don't think there's any argument with that. To me, number 5 basically includes consideration of 2, 3, 4. Those may be solutions to take a look at all of the problems. That's how I understood number 5. Is that how you understand it?
That is correct. Yeah, we're going
okay.
to study what it was, what it is. We're going to talk to residents. We're going to learn about their experiences. We're going to spend a lot of time digging into what it could be and then reporting back to you.
What was taken, what was there, and then how do you figure out a transition?
Right.
So
But-
I think we're,
But make sure, though, in this, though, you're going to have to include RUD land, too, because there's a lot of farming on RUD and a lot of big parcels.
Well, and that's why we're looking at rural zoning districts, so that's all
Because,
inclusive.
like, my main, yeah, I know.
Just so we're-
My main thing is, though, is when children are growing up, and if you take whether it's my large family or anyone else's, these kids should not be hindered in receiving their inheritance, and then there's 10,000 different ways to look at it, and this is going to be a tough thing to whittle out. But the main thing is not taking people's rights.
I definitely think that what I'm hearing through number 5 is considering all of those things, family exemptions, making sure that those things are looked at, what was allowed, what wasn't. All of that is why a more comprehensive review is necessary, but including all of those possibilities.
Agree.
All right. So is there anything, management, that you need from us, or do you have direction? Okay.
No, I think we're good. We'll work on a project scope and share more details with y'all about the timeline we think we'll need to accomplish that. But that's one of those projects that our new assistant manager will be helping with, Thomas Couch. So I think that'll be a great first project for planning staff and Tom to work on.
All right. Item number 3, council to discuss potential zoning code text amendments related to lot area measurement. Anything from management before we have a
Diane
discussion?
Dill's here too to help answer any questions. I think with this one, where the committee landed was adding flexibility. And when this first came back to y'all, I didn't hear any disagreement with where the committee landed. But what this goes to, if you look at the document, is really looking into the problem as defined as, there's an impact when right-of-way is not included into the total lot size. However, this is really not the case for any of our peers, and it doesn't make sense to all of a sudden include right-of-way as the total lot measurement. That would have a lot of trickle-down impacts. This document lays out the problems with doing that, and it would make staff's job a little more complicated. The first chart on this, table 4, shows what all of our peers across the state are doing, and as you all see, they all exclude right-of-way. So this isn't something that we would necessarily recommend going back. Where the committee talked, when this was at the committee, and you'll see this lined up, was really looking at how it impacts potential accessory dwelling units if you don't have quite an acre. That was one example that was brought before y'all recently where somebody had 0.9 of an acre. And if you had included right-of-way, it would have been an acre. So there were some limitations on what they could do. So if you go to the very end and you look at the options, you could do the
the status quo, continue to exclude right-of-way from lot area calculation, which is what all our peers do. You could revert back to the old methodology. And then 3 and 4 are flexibility items that the committee considered and recommended in terms of options to make this a little bit easier and give staff some flexibility. Happy to answer any questions related to that, and like I said, Diane is here to help as well.
You want to go first? Mr. Roddy?
Yeah. So I was just sitting here thinking about how many plats or parcels of land that's been on our books before a road ever come through there. And it would say, all right, your property extends all the way up to the front of this desk. Now that that road has come through, I have this old plat sitting here that says I got 10 acres. Now all of a sudden a road comes through, takes a sliver of it, and makes a road. Now I've lost that, so now you're saying I don't have 10 acres. And I'm sure that's probably how some of this has come about, because we have these old plats of record that were never updated because the property hadn't changed hands. But my plat says 10 acres, but that was before the road come through there. So now that the road has come through, I'm left with 9.8 or 9.86 or 9.9. And I don't want to get into a kicking match, for lack of better terms, with somebody who's lost a piece of land because a road has eventually come through the property that was never on the record. And so I think that's how we get to some of these issues where people who say, hey, I started out with 10 acres, how did I end up with 9 point whatever it is? And that's where common sense has to come into place with us, with our staff, to recognize no one's trying to get over on us, no one's trying to pass something that they shouldn't be doing, but recognize that, hey, this document was recorded before a road ever come through. That's where how we measuring kind of gets lost in the shuffle. And we've had a situation like that just this year where somebody thought they had 10 acres and they just had, I think it was 9.85, 9.86. We used our better judgment to go ahead and allow that. So I just want our staff to have that flexibility, have that common sense approach to resolving, because everything shouldn't come down to, well, you got to have 10 on the spot. What happened? You know, someone didn't just sell that person 9.86 and tell them that they had 10. Let's use some of our better judgment when we're making some of these decisions to make things work. This should be a chamber that people come in to look for us to give a reason to make it work, not always giving them a reason not to allow them to do something. And we talk about property rights, that's the first thing that we can do to let the public know that, hey, when you come here, we're gonna do all we can to make it work. If there's an absolute way that we can't do it, we have no choice. But if there's a way that we can do it, I want people to stand there and feel like they have a vote of confidence that we can make things work and not just be the council, well, sorry, buddy, you're 9.86, you gotta see if you can buy a sliver of land from your neighbor to build a house on. I don't think that's what the message we want to send to anybody.
Yeah, I agree with that. I know just like on my own property, on the road fronting sides, my pins are literally in the middle of the road. So if you count the pins are in the middle of the road, you got 5 foot worth of ditch there and another 6 foot on half of the road. You still, you know, at one time it was included in that acreage when it was purchased.
I believe number 4 addresses that. So, and then we could also, I like number 3, to consolidate and improve accessory structure standards for the accessory buildings. What do you guys think?
I agree with that.
So 3 and 4.
One of the questions that I have is should we be treating all of these things the same? Should AGC, should RUD, should they be treated the same as higher density developments? Because I understand that part of the resistance to just let's reverting back to the old. I mean, if we revert back to the old, then we wouldn't have this problem at all. The problem is the trickle-down idea that if you have RC, the ones that are high density, that if you have a big parcel, that could really make a bigger difference. But when you're talking about larger parcels, you don't have that same fear. And that's part of the concern that I see throughout some of the code, is that we're treating the rural districts the same as the high-density districts. And so I guess to ask the question, I know when we first had some feedback, the solutions and the proposals that we got would not have addressed the situation where the gentleman came and had just shy of 5 acres because it was a lot size configuration. There was no recommendation for that. I would like to know what is number 4 the solution that staff, is that something that you think addresses that issue?
So number 4 is when it's close. I don't know how close it would have to be. I'd have to ask staff what number 4 would cover. But that specific example, I don't know.
Is that an additional option than what we were previously given?
Yeah.
Because I think one of the questions I had was that there was no way to give that grace on a lot size, and that was not recommended.
Yeah, I don't know, Diane, if you could speak to that or not.
And if you're not, if this is something that we need to take a closer look at before we make a definitive decision, I just knew the last time we talked about this, the proposals we got wouldn't have fixed that situation.
I thought it was based on what the road frontage would have been. Like, I thought it was based on, like, what you could add back to that. Like, we had the guy who came, he had 15 acres, and his 3rd acre was a little bit short. So I thought it was what it would add back if his road frontage had decreased because of the lines being not in the middle of the road anymore, but on his property.
Right, so there's 2 things going on here. One is whether you're going to measure the lot size for accessory structure, and that's where we began talking about allowing to be able to do an adjustment for that, for the accessory structure. But staff was still saying that if you don't have 5 acres without the right-of-way, you still would not have 5 acres. So we would not recommend including our area in the right-of-way when it comes to actually measuring the lot size, minimum lot size requirements. And there's a good discussion about that in the document as to why that would not be an appropriate way to go.
I guess the question is, which of these solves the problem of the lot size that's less than 1/10 of an acre?
None of these would, for the lot size part. If you have to have 5 acres outside of the right-of-way, none of these address that situation.
Well, I guess reverting back to the old methodology.
That would.
Okay,
The
that's
old-
why I
yeah, I'm
support
sorry,
that
yeah,
one
the
then.
old methodology,
If that's the
yeah,
only
that
option we
would-
got,
would be back
that's
to
what I
the
wanted
old.
to make sure.
That's correct.
Yeah, I wouldn't support anything that didn't fix that problem.
And that's including going out to the road, in the road.
Yeah, I mean, apparently the only option on here that would fix that issue would be to revert back to the old methodology.
To include it.
Correct. And I think we ought to consider reverting back for the larger rural area, and maybe the trickle-down issue makes sense for the ones that have 4 houses to an acre. That could make a difference, but these bigger lots, you're not going to ever have that problem.
You could always loop this into our study of the rural zoning districts if you want.
As long as we make progress quick enough. I don't want
These
to,
are big
I don't want this
challenges
thing.
that are hard to tackle, so.
I know,
it
we're
takes
gonna have to
time.
make some progress
But we're
quick.
committed to it.
I'm comfortable with,
2,100
I'm comfortable with that being looped into that.
situation.
But if we don't have, to me, that's an easy fix, revert back on the large stuff, so,
If y'all want to assign that specifically back to staff on its own, that works as well. I think it's up to y'all how you want us to handle this. I would say I would not recommend going back how it was for everybody. And I think you just don't look any further from what our peers are doing. I don't think that would be a good idea. But if you want us to look specifically at AGC, we can look at that and then come back to y'all if that's a go-do.
I think at least coming up, making sure we've exhausted what are the options to fix that problem?
And then I think the other thing in terms of that is, do you want that to go back to committee, or do you want that to come back to the full council? I think that's something else for y'all to consider.
Just come back to council at that point.
I'm hearing just come back to council on that one.
Yeah.
I agree.
All right.
Since we're talking about this, I want to throw this out, since this is jumping off my page. We have 2,100 lots that are 5 acres or less.
Less than 5.
Yeah, less than 5, less than 5. This is where it gets important to those extra feet. And if we're talking about helping make things work, those extra feet will make a big difference in those lots, like Chrissy said, versus someone who has 100 acres or someone who has 50 acres. When you start getting the smaller lot sizes and wanting to do different things with those smaller lot sizes, that extra 7, 8 feet from the lot line to the road makes a huge difference of what people will be able to do with that lot size. And if we're not, I don't want to say giving them credit for it, that's one way to look at it, but they're going to be more restrictive of what they can do if they lose that footage, to be able to say, hey, we can include this in to allow you to do exactly what you want to do, because if we don't include it, now we have to tell you no, that you can't do it because you don't meet the requirements for the lot size. So just want to throw that out.
But it's better to give on that. It's better to say, okay, here's your total. It's better to say, okay, here, you're a little bit under the total, but we're going to allow you this road, than to have somebody come in at 4.95, and they've already, that does include the road. So you've got some give in one of those examples, but maybe not in the other. I'm just saying some discretion.
That's why this isn't easy. So, yeah,
It's like,
I agree with
it's
you.
like having a pair of rubber boots with holes in them.
I've looked at some of our Lancaster County, theirs is a whole lot easier to read and has a lot more flexibility. Chester's does. Ours is just, good luck with that, but we're going to be pushing for change quick. All right, first item in new business, council to consider initiating a rezoning pursuant to York County Code of Ordinances 155.1137A1 to rezone 48 split zone parcels along Sandifer Road as listed in Exhibit A from the Agricultural Conservation, AGC, Rural Development, RUD, and Residential Single Family 40, RSF 40 districts to the AGC 1 zoning district in order to place the parcels into a single appropriate zoning district.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item number 2, council to suspend the council rules without referral of the proposed resolution to a committee and adopt the resolution of the York County Council declaring the results of the referendum held on November 5th, 2024 on the imposition or reimposition of a 1% sales and use tax pursuant to the Capital Project Sales Tax Act.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll just say 71% in an area where our state, throughout the state, they've struggled with communities. A lot of the counties didn't get theirs passed, and I just want to say thank you to our Penny staff. I want to say thank you to the folks that helped to do this, and for our community for getting educated and understanding how important this is for us to be able to get our roads done. Is there anything, if you want to add?
So I'll just say that there were 9 counties in the state that tried to put a 1% sales tax forward. Only 4 of them passed, 5 of them failed. We were one of the 4, 71% was the highest of those 4, with the next highest being at 61%. So we were above and beyond all the other counties throughout the state, so just wanted to pass that information along.
And I think it's critical, and folks who understand how the program works, it's a no-brainer, especially when I think our county does a really good job of adding repaving projects on there and to leverage our existing, that's amazing. Folks don't even realize when we leverage our existing reserves to get those roads repaved, don't have to deal with the right-of-way or the utility relocation costs that can create problems. To get that done within 4 years, what the voter passed, less than what was budgeted, that's fantastic. So thank you to all those. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that moves forward. Item number 3, council to approve award regarding bid number 2947 for HVAC renovations at York County's planning building to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Edison Ford LLC of Charlotte, North Carolina, for a total project cost of $1,686,435 as part of the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Move now to item number 4, council to approve an award regarding bid number 2943 for HVAC renovations at York County's Heckle Complex to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Ferrara Weist LLC of Indian Land, South Carolina, for a total cost of $7,973,131.51 as part of the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item number 5, council to approve award regarding bid number 2945 for the Sheriff's Office District 3 renovation project to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, J&B Services LLC of Daleville, Alabama, for a total cost of $2,580,362.40, which includes county contingency as part of the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item number 6, council to authorize taxes included in Presidio cybersecurity software invoice in the amount of $13,527.60 through the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item number 7, council to provide first reading of an ordinance authorizing the First Amendment of that certain fee agreement by and between York County, South Carolina, Performance Friction Corporation and PFC Realty Limited Partnership relating to, without limitation, 1, updating the investment requirement of the project, and 2, extending the investment period of the project and other related matters.
Move to approve.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We will now go to, I believe it was number 7
7 and
in
12.
consent. Council to approve the Pennies 5 utility relocation policy.
Motion.
Do you have a motion?
Motion to defer a vote on this to December the 3rd during consent agenda.
December 2nd.
Is it second?
Just say the next meeting.
Next meeting, yes, next meeting, and first meeting in December. Sorry.
So I have,
Do we have a second?
I just have a question about that.
We got to get a second.
I'll second it. But I have a question.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
December 2nd, you're
So we're
right.
just going to defer, are we going to hear about this? Are we going to answer some questions?
Yeah,
first?
we're going to get into this. I couldn't discuss it until now, but I'd be glad to discuss it since I
We're not
deferred
going
it.
to talk about it now, but I mean, if we're going to
We're gonna talk
refer it
about it.
back to consent, when are we going to talk about it publicly?
So discussion, is that okay? Quick discussion? I want to give my reasoning for pulling this out and deferring this. I don't know how many phone calls you all took today, but I took a lot of phone calls from people that are affected. They feel like they're affected on White Street. I took calls from members of the commission. I've reached out to members of the commission as a result of the phone calls. I've talked to county staff. And all due respect, individually, at the next meeting when I vote, I'm going to stick with what I believe we've done consistently through pennies 3 and 4. There's a process, and I think we followed the process. All due respect to the individuals that feel a little differently, I felt like that deferring this would give our staff an opportunity to talk with those individuals and maybe put them at ease with why when we pass the Pennies project, and there's discussion of utilities, what we typically do is like to like. So we don't take utilities that are above ground and put them below ground, right? But there's some confusion over that. And so I just think sometimes you're better off talking through something, having an opportunity to talk about it and agree to disagree. But I, for one, can't see me not supporting what our staff and what was in consent agenda when we vote on it December the 2nd.
Well, I'm happy to have that conversation now. This is the same policy we had for pennies 3 and pennies 4.
That'd be
I think
great.
people were aware of that, so we're not changing anything on anybody. I think one of the questions that came up today was, the power lines, the electric lines, why are we not burying those as part of the White Street project? Well, Patrick's here, we're happy to tell y'all, we don't think we even have to move those power lines. So that really doesn't make a lot of sense, but because we do like for like, if a utility wants to bury their power lines, so be it, but that's on them. That should not surprise anybody that's worked with us in pennies 3 or 4. This thing has not changed. That's why we thought this was on consent, because it is the same policy we've had for the last 2 pennies. We're happy to answer any questions y'all have tonight. Patrick's here. We think this makes sense and it's worthwhile moving forward so we can begin work on pennies.
Any other discussion, or do we need to hear from Ms.
I'll
Roddy?
just say, I received a couple phone calls today as well. I reached back out to staff to say, hey, what are we changing in this policy? And it was clear as day. We're not changing anything. We're sticking with doing the same thing we've done on pennies 3 and 4. So if we're not changing anything, we've already reached out to those, basically the city of Rock Hill, to say nothing's changing. We're still doing like for like. If you want to bury your power lines, you're free to do so. But we're not taking power lines above ground and paying the additional expense of burying them underground. And I don't see the need to kick the can down the road, because I don't want someone else being able to dictate what our policies are. We've communicated to them, here's our policy. It's been consistent. We're not changing anything from this pennies, from the last 2 pennies. So why are we deferring? Just to please some of our friends and neighbors and people who call us, who think they have a inside track to pick up the phone and call us? Let's don't succumb to that. We know what our policy is. We know if we know we're going to vote for it at the next meeting, that's just another hurdle we're going to put up for the next meeting. Let's pass this, move on, because there's going to be another issue that comes up next meeting. I don't want to get into this thing, hey, let's make a phone call the day of the meeting to slow down what we know is inevitable of happening. That's not how we need to be that reactive. I think it's been communicated. Here's our policy. If we were changing something, I would have told Josh this afternoon, I would have told Kevin this afternoon. We need to slow down and explain to council. We need to explain to the public. We need to explain to those who would be possibly affected. But no one's being affected when the policy isn't changing. So I don't see the need to defer it, because there's a bigger message here than just what we're about to do. We had these discussions. We weren't expecting this to get pulled out, but it did. But free to discuss it. I think County Manager done a great job of explaining to me, done a great job explaining to this council. Nothing's changing. Why are we delaying it? Do we gain anything by doing it tonight versus the next meeting? No. But there's a message to why this is happening, and we need to make sure we address that message by moving forward tonight and don't allow others to dictate what we approve and disapprove at our meeting. So I'll say I won't be supporting the deferral. Let's vote on this and move on, because we already know that these wheels move slow as it is. Let's don't do anything to slow it down even further.
So I would just mention that I think maybe it's just semantics, but, I got a couple calls today too, and then when I looked at it and read it, I want to be sure, I feel like when RICO came along, we missed some stuff. So this is what it says. In order to be fair to all area utility service providers, staff is recommending York County prepare a policy for providing utility relocation costs associated with the Pennies 5 program. So it sounds like it's something they haven't seen before. That was my concern on that sentence. And then the other one was, with council approval, documentation will be forwarded to all area utility service providers to inform them of the new policy. So I just wanted to, if that's just semantics and we're talking about it's new because it's a new pennies and everything is the same, but it's not worded.
Yeah, so the last 2 pennies, this was approved before the referendum, and so we decided to wait till after it was approved. But this was something that the utilities actually asked for. So, and Patrick, you could speak to the history of that, but there was a lot of confusion. In pennies 1 and 2, there wasn't a policy. And I think when you don't have a policy, not everybody's treated the same, and things are different in one project than another. So in 1 and 2, we use the DOT criteria, and Patrick's here to answer any specific questions. But the utilities wanted to have some certainty about what was covered and what wasn't. And if we do provide, so for example, if we spent money to bury power lines, that would cost a lot more money for these projects. And we wouldn't have money to do roads, which our residents have asked us to do. And so the whole point of pennies is to do roads, not utilities. And I think that's the essential meaning. Our citizens have asked us to put this $400 million towards roads. And if we're going to pay to bury power lines, that's going to be very expensive. That's just one of many examples, but the utilities have asked for this policy in the past, and you could call the other utilities. They're very familiar with it, and their understanding of it. So, Patrick, I don't know if you had anything to add to that.
I mean, if that's the case, I don't have a problem supporting it tonight, but it's just the way it was worded, looked like we were doing something new.
Give a little bit of clarification on that. So I'm guilty of copying and pasting. So I literally went back to Penny's 4 memo in Minute-Track and just copied and pasted into Penny's 5. So while it's new because it's Penny's 5, there's nothing new with the policy itself.
Madam Chair.
And the estimates that were done on the projects, those were all done across the board using this same policy
Correct.
when estimating those.
While we were budgeting for Penny's 5, we anticipated it would be the same utility relocation policy as before, so we accounted for all budgeting for utilities that we felt would be in conflict.
If we went from above-ground utilities to burying these utilities now, would we have enough money to do all our projects?
No.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to hear. I think that seals the deal with, should we even be tinkering around with considering.
So for instance, with the specific project that folks have raised the issue, $6.5 million, that estimate that was put to the voters for $6.5 million, they voted for $6.5 million. That includes all of the repaving, the curb and gutter, anything that's in the way, utility-wise, to get that project done.
Correct.
And so all that will be done, it will be returned like to like. And the reality is that there's probably not an issue with electric utility that's necessary to do the project work in that. Is that right?
That's
Okay.
correct.
Madam Chair, one last comment. So, spent hours today. When I read this in our agenda packet, I had planned on taking this out of consent, and then I went back and read the language in it. But by that time, I've got telephone call from citizens and members of the commission and so forth and so on. So when you're thinking about this, what do? Do you not do anything? You just ignore the people that called you today? And we wouldn't have had any of this discussion. So what you shared, which I appreciate you sharing, people that are listening that felt differently now have an explanation. If I had not taken this out of consent, there would have been no discussion on this tonight as if we're ignoring them. And I have a problem with that. So I apologize if you're uncomfortable that I'm suggesting we take this out. We took it out of consent. Now it's a new business, and we'll vote on the second. But I felt like it was the right thing to do so we could have this discussion and people could understand why, I'm guessing, we'll end up approving this on the second. I plan on voting for what was suggested. But I thought this was the right way to do it. I will tell you, this was not an easy decision. This was very uncomfortable to do this because I know how some of you felt. And members of staff felt, but I think it was the right thing to do. And this gives staff a chance to.
I think clarification is always important.
Yes.
Especially, especially when it's a referendum, and we want people, they have to know that we're accountable and everything, but at the same time, I would, can I change I don't know how to change my motion, but can I make a motion that we vote on it?
Either withdraw your second, or do you want to change, are you satisfied that the discussion's been had? If you want to withdraw your motion and just move to approve?
Yeah, so I would just withdraw my second. Can I withdraw my second and make a motion to approve?
Point of order, can you withdraw a second?
I'll say this, I'm not in favor of withdrawing my first because we had a chance to, our staff had a chance to explain our position. Now, if somebody else, like the gentleman that spoke tonight, wants to have his chance to talk to our county manager and let our county manager explain, or Patrick explain, he's got until the second to do it.
So point of order, the second can be withdrawn? Do you want to
So I'll
withdraw?
my second, yes.
There you go.
And I'll make a new motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second on his motion.
The motion
Go
is
back to
now,
his
no,
motion.
the
No,
motion
she
was
withdrew her
withdrawn.
second.
Okay, so
So
I motion to approve. Her second.
Not my-
you are seconding her motion to approve.
Yeah, I'm seconding
All
her
right.
motion 'cause she
Any
withdrew it.
discussion? All in favor? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries 6-1. Move now to item number 12.
5 to 1.
I'm sorry?
You said 6 to 1. Is that Tom?
Yep, 5-1. I can't count tonight.
Tom said yes.
All right, this one, I need to say this before I read this one. So, all right, so out of abundance of caution, I'm going to recuse myself from the vote for this action so as to avoid any possible appearance of an ethical issue. My teenage son, who graduated high school earlier this year, works temporarily for this company. He starts as a lineman at York Tech in January. He's ending his employment this year. The original bid was awarded to the company as lowest bidder the year before he even applied, and the change orders and the change order are funded by pre-approved contract contingencies and a grant. So I'm going to recuse myself and turn this over to you, Ms. Love, to read that. Number 12.
Okay, number 12 from consent. Council to approve change order number 2 totaling $119,496.98 for Leitner Construction Company regarding bid number 2882, project 213335 for Ebenezer Park Phase 2 to construct a turnaround at the park entrance.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right. Where are we now? We do not have, do we? We don't have any committee or other reports. Do we have any council new non-agenda comments before we go into executive session? We don't have an executive, we don't have an executive session. So
Oh,
you're holding us up from adjournment, Mr. Roddy.
I got an extra 10 minutes then. I got an extra 10 minutes. I'll just say, just to piggyback off the comment that Watts just made, I think healthy discussions are good. Like you said, we wouldn't have had that open discussion. Hopefully we cleared up some concerns. People here, people watching on TV, or maybe watch online even later. But I think one thing that's unique with this council is we're at a space where the public wants to know what we think, how we feel, how we vote, and so I welcome all the healthy debate. I think it's good for this body, it's good for our community, because we can all sit up here and vote the same way each and every time, but I don't think that's the flavor of the day of this council. And I hope we never get to that point, because we all see things through a different lens, but I think we all want the same thing. So let's keep the healthy debates going on any and all issues, and I think at the end of the day, when we come together to do the right thing for our county, I think that's the goal of this council, to be reflective in how we vote, how we speak, and how we view things. So let's just keep grinding and wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving coming up. We won't get to meet again before Thanksgiving, and if you have any extra turkey and dressing or whatever, call me over, because I love to eat. So
No Carolina Clemson tickets?
Kevin Madden done put in for them.
Oh, he's already put in?
Yeah, Kevin done put in for them.
Any other comments before? I'll say happy Thanksgiving. You guys who don't do we started this tradition about 5 years ago. The York does turkey trot, so you got to get out and go walk around a little bit before you stuff that belly. We've got our whole family coming, and I encourage all of you guys to do it. It's a fun time.
Madam Chair, not a committee report necessarily, but the Health and Environmental Protection Committee worked on the parks, strategic plan for parks. And as you all know, Bob Bunbright presented that at our last workshop, and I'm pretty excited that we're now going to, whatever committee, whoever's serving on the committee in January, will start working on this initiative, and it should be a positive outcome.
Anyone else? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.